Welcome to How to Make Money in Stocks with Investors Business Daily, featuring market commentator and host of the IBD Market Wrap, Amy Smith, and Matthew Galgani, host of the IBD Stock Analysis and editor of the IBD Extra newsletter. Tune in each week as we use history, not hunches, to help you stay safe in today's market and get in early on tomorrow's winning stocks. Now, here's Matthew Galgani.
Welcome everyone to another episode of How to Make Money in Stocks with Investors Business Daily. On this week's show, we want to talk about how to find companies that potentially could become the next big market winners, where you can find them, and where you can learn more about what they do and what trends they're leading.
And it's one of my favorite sections of the paper. But first, Matt will take a look at the market.
Once again, there was no shortage of news about Greece, about the Q1 GDP numbers, the housing market. Plenty of headlines for the bears to confirm what they're thinking or the bulls to confirm what they're thinking. But the bottom line is the indexes remain range-bound, and that makes it a tough environment for investors. And Paul Whitfield in the Big Picture on Friday laid out some stats that confirm that. He noted that as of Thursday, we've had 101 trading sessions this year. And of that, 50 came when the market outlook was uptrend under pressure. Compare that to the first 5 months of 2014 when we only had 13 days where it was under pressure. In 2013, there were only 11 days with the market under pressure in the first 5 months. 2012, it was just 6. 2011, 22. In 2010, there were 7. And 2009, the year this current bull market cycle started, we had 19 days where it was under pressure. So that gives you an idea. We've had 50 so far this year, so it's been a much tougher, much more uncertain, range-bound environment. Now that said, we still are in an uptrend, and there still are some stocks that are setting up and doing well. But you do want to be extra picky in this environment and keep any new buys on a short leash in case they do go against you. But keep building your watch list and keep an eye out for stocks like Illumina or AbbVie, which I covered in the IBD Stock Analysis this week, that are still setting up. They have some good numbers and they could potentially break out. But again, know what kind of environment you're operating in and adjust your buy and sell rules to fit those conditions.
When you start investing, it's critical to have a game plan for success and a simple routine that fits your schedule. With Investors Business Daily, you get both. The Market Pulse shows you the right time to buy or move to the sidelines. Unique lists like the IBD 50 highlight stocks that could be on the verge of a big move. And IBD Stock Checkup gives you pass or fail ratings for any stock before you buy. Get a free trial at investors.com/radio show. That's investors.com/radio show. Now, back to How to Make Money in Stocks with Investors Business Daily.
Regardless of what the current market conditions are, one thing you always want to be doing is to be on the hunt for companies that have the potential to become big winning stocks. Now, as you're looking at them and you're researching them, learning the story behind the stock, they may not be in a position that's conducive to buying. And maybe the market is in a downtrend or in a correction, and it's not a good time to jump into stocks. But regardless of that, you always want to be building your watch list of companies that have some innovative product, they're driving a new industry trend, and they're part of a big demographic shift or a big change in the industry that has the potential to drive long-term growth. So today we're going to talk about a couple of places where you can find those types of stocks. And one of the key ones is the New America column, which is in the paper and on investors.com each day, Monday to Friday.
And I remember when I was first learning the system, Matt, the New America page was actually my favorite because, it talked about all these innovative companies and what they do. The other thing that the New America page really helps you with is it helps you watch what's happening with trends.
Yep.
What is new? And we may even have companies in here like a Walt Disney. Now you'd say, well, Disney's not a new company. It's not a newer IPO. So the N in can sum, how does Disney factor into that? Well, all I need to say to you is the word Frozen. And of course, they made tons of money off of the animated feature Frozen.
It was the best-selling animated feature of all time.
It just made a ton ton of money. And that soundtrack, my little nieces and nephews would sing the songs over and over. Anyway, and the Star Wars is also coming up. Now, for all the baby boomers that remember the very beginning of Han Solo and all that, that's kind of exciting. It's a revival. They expect it to make a lot of money. That's what Disney is doing that's different. And they have a lot of other very successful movies in the pipeline that, are coming out. So as we go through it, all the time I read this New America page, and I want to point something out. On Fridays, we have a New America Index. It's an archive of several stocks that have been in there over the last couple of months. And just go and look and review that list. It's a fantastic list. If you miss some of these stocks as they were breaking out, keep watching them, see if they continue to do well. And again, this page is not necessarily intended to be like the IBD 50, stocks that maybe perhaps are approaching a potential buy point or that are basing. So when they're in the paper, it doesn't mean that you go buy them, but it does mean these are very interesting companies, and a lot of these stocks go on to make some hefty gains.
And one of the reasons we have this column is because we are looking for stocks that have the N in CANSLIM. CANSLIM is an acronym for the 7 common traits that most big winning stocks share before they launch a big move, and the N stands for something new. And like Amy said, it may be a new product, it may be a new service, it may be new management, and it could also be a new industry trend. And we're always saying that you want to get to know the story behind the stock, and the New America column is one of the easiest and quickest ways to do that. Not only are you finding out some new names that are doing something interesting, or maybe familiar names like with Disney that are now doing something that could potentially spark some new growth, but you've got a quick digest of what those trends are, what the new products are, what's in the pipeline, say if it's a drug company, what do they have coming out, what's the potential for that market. So it's specifically written for growth stock investors, which makes it very helpful because not only are you getting the story behind the stock, you're getting that tie-in to how that could potentially affect the share price of the stock. And in the next segment, we'll talk about some recent New America columns on particular companies and talk about some of the products and the trends that are driving those companies. But first, we also want to mention some other things that are on the New America page. So it's not just one article, it's actually a full page that has other features that you definitely want to take a look at.
I think that this page in the paper is really designed quite well. At the top, we have the leading new issues. And so let's say for some reason you haven't been paying attention to these. You could see that Shake Shack and CyberArk and Spark Therapeutics and some of these other ones have performed very well from when they came public. Now again, that doesn't mean that we go out and we buy Shake Shack. Okay, that's not what this is intended. It's just to alert you as to what is doing well in the current environment. And some of these food places have done very well, Matt. Some, interesting. Shake Shack, it's a burger place, and yet it has done well. Cybersecurity, of course, there's Palo Alto that has done well, and CyberArk. So again, we're seeing trends as we're looking at what the leading new issues are. And something, Matt, we have the paper right in front of us here. We're looking at the IPO filings soon to be priced, and that's another section that's in the paper. And what's interesting here is you see there's always a lot of medical names in this, a lot of pharmaceutical names, and also in the price of recent IPOs, which is on the same page, lots of medical names as we go down through here. So in fact, we also list it by the industry group, whether it's computer software, medical, biomed, and you can go down the list, and I can see just by a quick glance of this that there's a lot of medical stocks that have come public recently, and a lot of them that are doing pretty well.
Right, so on just one page, it's very easy to get a pretty good feel for what the IPO market currently is. You've got on the upper right the leading new issues, so these are stocks that have gone public recently, and they're doing relatively well. They're the leaders among the most recent IPOs. And then below that, you see which ones are about to be priced. Now again, we've talked about this many times on the show. You don't want to buy a brand new IPO on the day that it goes public. It's not a good balance of that risk-reward ratio. You're better off waiting for a stock to form a new base. But this feature in the paper lets you know what's coming out. And if it's a particularly strong IPO or something that's really interesting, go to investors.com, do a search on that name, and you'll likely find some tech articles or other articles about that company so that you can learn a little bit more about it as it gets ready to go public.
Another feature that's on this page, which I think is interesting, is we have the IBD New Issues Index. So we overlay, you can see a little chart here. You can see how the S&P 500 has been doing, and then you can see how the new issues have been doing. And it's very interesting. This year, they've really actually done pretty well. In fact, there's a couple of blips in here where the new issues have done well, even when the market was not doing quite as well. Now, again, we're not saying we should go out and buy a ton of new IPOs. That's really not the reason. It's just to see what's working in the current environment. And it is good to see that this new blood has come into the market. There are some newer IPOs that we mentioned last week on the show, and these may take a few weeks before they set up and they really get going. But it's always interesting to watch these and to see how they perform.
And if you're not familiar with the New America page and the New America column, go to our website and you'll see an example of it. Plus, we'll link to the articles that we'll talk about in the next segment. You'll find that at investors.com/investing show. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about Mobileye, CyberArk, and some other companies that are doing some interesting things in some very interesting industries and that were covered recently in the New America column. We want to say up front, too, that these are not recommendations. These stocks are not necessarily near a buy point. They don't necessarily meet what criteria you're using or what your portfolio strategy is. The point is to start looking for companies that have the potential to become big winning stocks. You want to make sure that all of the key pieces are in place before you buy. A good market environment, the stock has good and growing earnings growth and other fundamentals, and the chart is showing a proper buying area. But even if those are not in place at the moment, keep building that watch list. You want to have these kind of companies on your radar screen. So if you're not using the New America page and the New America column as part of your routine yet, you definitely want to start doing that and pay special attention to companies that are part of and hopefully leading a major demographic shift or a major trend that has multi-year long-term growth potential. And of course, one example of that is the shifts in healthcare with Obamacare and the aging of the baby boomer generation.
Well, it's very interesting. There's a New America article here, Matt, that really addresses that. And the title of it, it says, Medical Staff Demand Boosts AMN Healthcare. Now, the ticker on this is AHS. And again, not a recommendation, but just kind of interesting to see where we are shifting. And of course, this shift has been underway with the Affordable Health Care Act. AMN Healthcare has really grown as the demographics, as Matt said, the age of the baby boomers 65 and older, plus an improved economy, have sparked a surge in demand for healthcare workers. And what this company does is they help provide healthcare staffing and workforce solutions in the U.S. We interviewed the CEO of the company, and she said in the article, she said the demand for healthcare professionals is through the roof. And as more people have gotten onto either Obamacare or they've gotten onto insurance, more people go to the emergency room or to an urgent care center to see a doctor. And what a lot of these healthcare places do is they actually go to AMN to help get their nursing staffing. In fact, temporary nurse staffing accounts for the biggest percentage of the company's revenue. And so that tells you that the demand for nurses is big, and it's one of these things that this company provides.
And just based on, for example, the system that they set up in Tennessee years ago, they knew that was a result of expanding coverage meant more people using the services, and it created a doctor shortage and a nurse shortage in that state and elsewhere where it was tried. So we know from that experience that that is likely to happen, and it is happening from Obamacare. So of course that creates opportunities for companies like AMN to handle staffing and to help hospitals and urgent care centers and others manage that big change.
And I can tell you, both of my parents unfortunately spent some time in the convalescent center, and there definitely is a shortage of nurses. I mean, they as quick as they could hire someone, they were busy.
And another hint here too is that you don't know until later which of the companies in a particular industry will end up being the really big growth leaders and the best performing stocks. So one thing you want to do while you're reading these articles is also look for the competitors, and they will talk about that. Who else is in that space? What are the challenges for each? And also another thing you can do is go to investors.com and pull up an IBD stock checkup for that particular company and you'll see what are the top 5 leaders within that same industry group. So this is a good way to learn about the trend and then also learn about who are the other competitors vying for leadership within that industry.
And of course, as you're reading these articles, and you don't know right away, especially if a company's a newer IPO, but what has that big stock potential? Because those are stocks that usually take off when we have a new uptrend. And we don't know, but if you have a lot of these names that you have done some research on and you're familiar with, you will start to see them. Palo Alto Networks has obviously been a powerful performer. And so as you realize, just think about the news, as you were hearing these breaches in Target and Home Depot, and that all this information was stolen, we realized that cybersecurity was going to be a big deal. So look for those great big trends.
And that's a good segue into some other stocks we wanted to talk about, because the whole rise of mobile computing and cloud computing and this concept of the Internet of Things, what some people call IoT, basically all of these devices and networks getting tied together. It opens up huge opportunities to do some really interesting things with cars and with many other industries, but it also exposes everyone's data to potential hacking risk. And of course, that then drives demand for cybersecurity firms like Palo Alto, like CyberArk, like Qualys, like Vasco Data Security, and others. And we've written about each of these stocks recently in the New America. And when we write about it, we try to get into what makes that particular company's services or products unique. And if you go and read the article on CyberArk, you see that they are less focused on the perimeter, keeping people out of the perimeter of a particular network, and more concerned about what do you do once somebody gets into your network and they start going after those administrative accounts that give people access to everything. They can change passwords, they get all that private data. So these so-called privileged accounts are what CyberArk really focuses on.
Of course, there's always a chance hackers will get into a network, but CyberArk helps make sure they can't do extensive damage if they do breach a company's network.
Another company that was profiled in the New America is Texas Roadhouse. And the title of this article says how Texas Roadhouse sizzles despite the high cost of steak. So the most obvious way for a restaurant to deal with higher food costs is just to raise the menu prices. But Texas Roadhouse management decided not to do that and to take a different way of dealing with rising beef costs over the past few quarters. They think that their loyalty to their customers, the people that come in all the time, is more important. So they were willing to kind of eat it for the short term, knowing that steak prices would probably come back down. Now, these are Southern-style steakhouses, if you've never been into a Texas Roadhouse. And as the name would imply, they have many of their restaurants in Texas. They have 56 there, followed by Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana. They also have 5 Bubba's, which specialize in burgers, pizza, and sandwiches. But I think that this strategy is very interesting. They're taking a short-term hit to their margins instead of alienating their value-minded customer base. And then in the next 12 to 24 months, they expect these margins to improve as beef costs come down. And then they will have had these loyal customers that they've served their steaks, ribs, chicken, homemade style sides, fresh baked bread. This is making me hungry. Anyway, they serve 300,000 meals every day to an average of 5,000 guests a week.
And they have some really fun stuff on their menu. I haven't been out to a Texas Roadhouse yet, but I did notice driving back from Sacramento down the 5, somewhere there they have a Texas Roadhouse restaurant now. I'll have to pop in there at some point because they have interesting menu items. They have roadkill and rattlesnake bites.
They have the roadkill steak.
Yeah. And one of the things you want to think about when you're looking at restaurants in particular is how much have they expanded? What is the potential to expand to other states?
For example, they currently only have 8 restaurants in California, with 1 more to open in July.
So in addition to reading the New America column, another thing you might want to do is go to the company's investor relations website and see what their plans are. What have they been talking about in terms of how aggressively they're going to roll out restaurants in the future?
And you know what? In addition to the New America page, something that I do on the weekends, Matt, when I have time, is if I go through the IBD 50 and I do not know what the company does, I'm going through, all the charts and everything, I will then, as you say, I'll go to the company website. I'll go to ourinvestors.com to see if we have any articles written on it. I will even look up to see if we've done a New America article maybe on the company that I happen to miss. So in this way, the more you read about these companies, the more you feel the conviction when you actually do purchase a stock. And the person that does a ton of reading is Bill O'Neill.
Yeah, it's not just a cliche to say that you want to know the story behind the stock. You really do want to know what they do, what's the potential for it, because that will help you hold better. If you do get into the stock and it has a little volatility to it, you'll see, is this really a game changer with big time potential, or is it just kind of a mediocre stock that you want to get a few percentage points out of? Now, before we wrap up, another stock we want to talk about really quickly is Mobileye, and it is part of this Internet of Things revolution, particularly tied to the connected cars. Now, we're all seeing the commercials, and the new cars have a lot of driver-assisted camera systems that show you what's behind you when you're backing up, lane changing help, other things like that. And of course, down the road, the self-driving cars, or at least the semi-autonomous self-driving cars, are certainly coming soon. And one of the key players in that space is Mobileye. It already has contracts and supplies to 22 of the 25 biggest car makers in the world. So it is clearly one of the leaders in this space, and that space is not going away. It's clearly in a growth phase because maybe a few years ago, some of these nice camera features and other fancy things were really limited to high-end luxury cars. But now it's seeping down into more affordable cars, which means more mass market, more volume, and potentially a lot of growth for Mobileye.
And there may be competition for Mobileye,
For
but
sure.
the point is, this is a technology that is not going away. We are going to try to find better and better ways to make driving safer, and as you said, to make it sort of, you may not have the car that completely drives by itself,
Right.
but you're going to have something that's very, very good. It's so that we don't have accidents as often, and that way more lives are saved. So it's a wonderful technology, and there's, even though the market may be a little bit difficult right now, remember that all of the innovators all over the world are not just sitting back waiting for a better market. They're innovating right now. So when you have the opportunity, read about some of these companies so that you're really poised, even if, making gains in today's market is a little difficult. You always want to stay on top of your game. Really, don't go away. Don't fall asleep. Keep reading, keep studying.
And don't get wed to any one company. See what the competition is doing, see how their stocks are performing, see how their earnings are growing, and keep an open mind about which company may ultimately become the big leader. And maybe there's an IPO around the corner that will become the big leader and disrupt these other guys. So the bottom line is keep reading the New America column, check out the New America page for information on IPOs, and make that part of your routine so that you have these potential game changers on your radar screen.
Imagine a Sunday morning, coffee in hand, you turn on your laptop or tablet, and you see a handful of stocks near a potential buying range. That's what you get with Leaderboard from IBD, a timely watch list put together by our market experts, and it's updated throughout the week with alerts to any buy or sell signals. The results? In 2013, Leaderboard has more than tripled the performance of the S&P 500. So to see what's on the list right now, get a free trial of Leaderboard at investors.com/radio show. That's investors.com/radio show. Now, the final segment of How to Make Money in Stocks with Investors Business Daily market commentator Amy Smith and Matthew Galgani, editor of the IBD Extra newsletter.
We got a nice email from Marvin, and he said, encourage your listeners when they're driving in the car, when they're, maybe waiting for a flight, when they're walking the dog or whatever, to download and listen to the podcasts that we have. And you can do that. You can go to iTunes and download them on your phone. We have hundreds of them, literally now, Matt. We have lots of shows you can listen to. And he said it's a sensational way to keep up with the market. It's helped him be a better trader. And he said, thank you for what you both do. So, Marvin, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm a bit of a podcast junkie myself. I'm constantly loading up the phone with something to always listen to if I'm out walking the dog or doing whatever.
Helps with the commute, too,
Helps
in the
with
car.
The commute, for sure. And you can download our show on iTunes, and you can see how to do that and get notes for this episode and all the episodes that we've done at investors.com/investing show.
Okay, see you next week, everybody.
You've been listening to How to Make Money in Stocks with Investors Business Daily, featuring Amy Smith and Matt Galgani. For more stock ideas and investing strategies, and to subscribe to the free podcast of this show, log on to investors.com/radio show. That's investors.com/radio show.